Hey folks, a bit of an informal setting this time. I didn't feel like doing the usual routine in the video room, and hopefully this looks fairly cozy and comfy, whatnot. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things that came up on one of my recent videos, and just to get that out of the way in the beginning, I do not mean to attack anyone here in particular. So this is not meant to just poke at particular comments and be like, oh, you're so stupid. No, it's really just a couple of things that I felt would be worth addressing. Namely, the video where I did the surprise spear throw at my sparring partner. And quite a few people said things like, well, you just disarmed yourself and that wouldn't do anything against armor. And what if he does this? What if this and that, whatever? So, first of all, again, just a quick remark to get that out of the way. This was not about this overhand versus underhand debate. I did not mean to use that as a proof of the superiority of the overhand grip. No, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. There has been a lot of discussion around that topic, and I feel there have been pretty good arguments on either side. But before I make any statements, I just want to, experiment a bit more on my own and practice and see whatever works out best for me personally, at least, and then hopefully get a bit more of an educated opinion. Other than that, the thing about armor, like a lot of comments said, well, that wouldn't work if the guy wears armor and you wouldn't be able to penetrate and the throw was too weak for that and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so first of all, if my opponent in a real fight was wearing heavy armor, or let's say mail hauberk, which I would classify as kind of medium armor, I wouldn't do that. I don't think there would be too much of a point in that. I mean, maybe you could get through mail with a, decently thrown spear/javelin. I'm not sure. I haven't tried that. Would be something worth testing, which I might do in the future sometime. But I simply wouldn't do that if my opponent wears any substantial armor. In our sparring, we usually go by the assumption of unarmored. Second thing, the strength of the throw. Some people said that, well, that wouldn't do much because it's too weak, whatever. Well, first of all, the how do you judge how powerful an attack is? I have an idea how most people probably go about judging the power of an attack by how much you telegraph. If it's one of these really, chambering it and this really strong anticipation, they probably consider that to be a strong attack because that's what you can visually pick up on. But that's not necessarily the case. There are ways of generating a lot of power from a seemingly static, unprepared position and very quick and straightforward. So you don't always have to do these huge telegraphed movements. And telegraphing is another point. You don't want to go into full Olympic javelin thrower stance and then unleash this powerful Hulk throw, because your opponent will see that coming from a mile away. It's not very effective. You have to move quickly and directly. You can't do this anticipatory cocking/chambering. Reduces your chance of success. Let's put it like that. And then there's the thing. Whenever I see someone point out about an attack in our sparring, like, oh, that wouldn't work, that wouldn't cause a significant injury, that wouldn't be a kill, all of that's too weak, whatever. Well, you have to understand that obviously it's sparring. We're not trying to kill each other, literally. Sure, we have nylon blades and rubber spear points and protective gear, all of that, but even with that, you can still cause quite a bit of damage. People have gotten broken fingers from nylon practice swords. Yeah, this might seem surprising, oh, it's just plastic sword, but you can generate quite a bit of force with that, especially considering that the ones that we're using, are actually the same weight and balance as a steel sword. It may not look like it, and it may be surprising, but they pulled that off. Those practice swords are actually pretty realistic. So if we were to bash each other with 100% intensity and full force and just brutally smashing, that could cause some injury, and obviously we don't want that. So yeah, that's that. And then there is this general what-if attitude, what I like to call what-if skeptics. A certain self-defense expert, Mark McYoung, also known as Animal, usually refers to such people as what-if monkeys, but let's not get too insulting here. But the kind of person who, whenever you demonstrate any sort of martial arts technique, they will always hammer you with questions. Oh, what if he does this? What if he does that? It wouldn't work if this and if that and blah, blah, blah. All of those hypothetical situations. And that's a pretty common thing. It seems to be particularly common among people who don't actually practice martial arts themselves. And I can understand that. If you look at particular things, a demonstration goes, okay, your opponent does this, you do that, so on and so forth. You may sometimes wonder, but what if he acts differently? Because sometimes some of the technique demonstrations may seem as if they're intended as some kind of universal, wonder tincture solution for everything, like the unbeatable technique. Whereas in reality, it's just, in this particular situation, you can do that. And that's not even comprehensive. In this particular situation, this is an option. It's not the exclusive thing to do. You can generally see both in modern martial arts and in historical martial arts. In the manuscripts, you do usually have quite a few different techniques, even for the same attack. And of course, for different things, you do different things. And that's generally the response. If somebody asks, oh, what if he does that? Well, then you do something else. You act according to what your opponent does. That doesn't mean you always you wait for your opponent to do something. In fact, the historical manuals typically emphasize that you're supposed to take initiative. You're supposed to, attack the opening, and you're supposed to force your opponent to be on the defensive. Generally, this what if this, what if that, you can say it reflects a certain healthy, critical point of view. Certain skepticism is definitely in order. Because, obviously there are plenty of bullshit martial arts techniques out there. I always cringe when I see somebody teach a knife defense which consists of static block like this. Like, here, present the vulnerable inside of your arm, present your arteries to the opponent, ready to be sliced, and expect that to work against the knife. Those are the kinds of things that make me cringe as well. But, it's on the other hand, if you just always go by, no, that's not going to work if he does that. This is not going to work if he does that. Well, of course, there is no single unbeatable technique. I've mentioned that before, but it bears repeating. And I guess that's part of the reason why people react in such a way. This mentality that there is a single waterproof, absolute perfect technique that works against everything, everyone, every single time. And it's complete and pure fantasy. There is no such thing. There is always a counter to any attack. There is very often also a counter to the counter, and a counter to the counter of the counter, It's just, there's always something else you can do, unless you screw up the timing. There are situations where if you allow your opponent to execute a technique too far and you get past a certain point, then yes, there is indeed no more counter. For example, in a takedown or in a throw, grappling, very typical. If you pass the point if your opponent has already thrown you off balance and is in the process of taking you down, it's too late. You can't counter anymore at that point. That's true, but there is a point at which you can counter. You just need to get the right timing. So in other words, back to the spear throw. The way I did it was I basically exploited a mistake that my practice partner did, because he threw a cut to my shield, basically, at a distance where he couldn't have hit anything but my shield. And that was a mistake, because you're wasting time and you're opening yourself up if you just attack the opponent's shield. It doesn't really achieve anything. And while he did that, I was throwing the spear. So the other thing that someone said, what if you miss? Or what if he dodges? Well, we were at pretty close distance, so I would have to be pretty amazingly incompetent to miss at that distance at such a large target. A chest is, pretty large. And the other thing is, since he was moving at the same time and he was still recovering from his own attack, he had a hard time responding. If your opponent strikes while you're moving, it's more difficult for you to stop an action and respond to your opponent's action than to respond to your opponent's action when you're just standing still. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have about that. So again, this is not meant to trash any comments. This is really just what I find a good opportunity to clarify a couple of things. So hope this is helpful, and thanks for watching.